Once more, it's time to say goodbye to some long-standing companies. Rokudenashi BLUES is the final Famicom game from Bandai and TOSE. Okay, there's a couple technicalities on that one, since one of Bandai's subsidiaries still has a game to go, and both Bandai and TOSE are working together on games for their Detach expansion system. But in terms of Famicom cartridges, this is the last time we're going to see these two titans. Bandai was up there with the most prolific Famicom publishers. They made 47 games for the system. Virtually all of them were based on cartoons that they had the license for, and virtually all of them were terrible. They did improve over time. They actually had some playable games in the later days of the Famicom's life, but they were still putting out low-effort garbage right to the very end. One of Bandai's quirks, perhaps because they are a toy company, was that they liked weird peripherals for the Famicom. The most notable of these would be their Family Trainer, a plastic mat that lets you control games with your feet. They made a whole line of games based on that. And Bandai's most consistently reoccurring partner in these crimes was TOSE, a contract developer that throughout the 80s and 90s really worked hard to keep their involvement with games secret. TOSE was the single most prolific developer for the Famicom. By my count, they were responsible for 89 Famicom games. 8.5% of the Famicom's library was one developer. And TOSE worked for everybody. Even Nintendo used their services from time to time. TOSE seemed to have two significant issues. First, as a contract developer, they were always constrained by their publisher. So if someone like, say, Bandai decided that all they needed for their game was the popular license, then TOSE got no budget or time and cranked out garbage based on common formulas. The other issue is that their technical and design staff didn't really seem to be top tier. Their technical abilities grew over time. TOSE was a contract house, they knew it, they were just there for the paycheck. And Bandai and TOSE's final game, Rokudenashi BLUES, really feels like a capstone to everything that they had done before. A quickie game based on a license, with some poorly thought out mechanics, but just enough technical polish that it's not a complete stinker. Rokudenashi BLUES started out as a comic about the day-to-day travails of a bunch of tough punks at a Tokyo high school. These days it seems to be best remembered for a live-action adaptation of the material. The concept behind the game Rokudenashi BLUES is kind of an adventure game, kind of an RPG. When you start the game, you're given your choice of 4 characters to play as. Each of them has their own story, and I chose to play as Maeda. He's essentially the main character of Rokudenashi BLUES. Inside locations, you can walk around freely like your standard RPG on the Famicom. Hit A and you'll bring up a menu and you can choose to talk to someone right in front of you, search, or use an item. The last one isn't really an option, it's just your money. While you have to be directly in front of someone to talk to them, if you choose search, then you're given a list of places in your current location where you can search. And then you go through each of those in turn and might find an item or some money. If you do find something, you're given the choice to take it or leave it. And I don't know why you'd ever choose to leave it behind. You can take your money to the convenience store where you could buy items, or you could go to restaurants where you could buy food to restore your health. But what you really need to spend your money on is training. There's a gym where you can play a mini-game to work out, and as long as you do the bare minimum in the mini-game, you'll level up. It costs 500 yen to play, and then you'll face this guy who will shift to the right or left at random. Press in that direction and hit B or A, basically choosing if you're swinging left or right, and if you hit him, you'll score a point. You have 40 opportunities per training session to do this, and as long as you hit him at least 10 times, you'll level up. I hit him 30 times in one training session, and still only got the single level up, so I don't think there's a benefit for doing extremely well. You'll have to play this training game roughly 100 times. That's not hyperbole either. Your progress as you level up is relatively slow, and the way fights are paced, you'll have to level up a lot like this. Anytime you have spare cash, you should be coming here. It puts the game into a bit of a loop. You go to a location, you search everywhere for money, Then you take that money and you go play the training minigame for a while. Combat is actually relatively rare. Sometimes you'll have to get into a fight to advance the story, and there's a few places around town where you'll just find punks and can beat the snot out of each other. But there aren't really random battles here. The way that the battle system works is weird. You have the options to fight, reconfigure your attacks, defend, or run away. All fights are one-on-one affairs with no party management or anything like that. If you choose to attack or reconfigure, you've got your choice of 4 different call-outs that you make when you fight. These don't actually mean a whole lot, it's just something that you'd say before you throw a punch. Each one of them represents a 4-hit combo, and hits come in light, medium, and heavy. Each of those drains a bit of stamina when you use them, and if you run out of stamina or health, then you lose the fight. When you're reconfiguring the attacks, you get to choose which attack you do in what order. Not all moves will be available for every attack line either. You'll probably want to set one up with some lighter attacks, a couple with mix-ups between light and medium, and one that has a big attack. When you're fighting, you just watch these play out, and the attacker is always on the right-hand side while the defender is always on the left. It doesn't switch sides for both you and your opponent. Sometimes, your character will have an opportunity to do a counterattack. You'll interrupt their combo in the middle, and then take your own punch. Beat on each other like this until one person runs out of stamina or health, and then the battle's over. There's no experience or money gained this way. You just go on with things. You also don't recover health very easily in this game. You have to do it by going to a restaurant or using a consumable item. You can go back to your apartment and save the game in your bedroom. There's 2 battery save slots here, but saving remembers how healthy you are. If you do get beat, the penalty is moving very, very slowly. You'll just have to poke around until you can afford to recover. Rokudenashi BLUES is a super obscure Famicom game. It is the rarest Bandai Famicom game by quite a bit. If you wanted a copy, you'd really have to go hunting for this one. And maybe for that reason, this doesn't get any attention from Famicom fans in Japan. I wasn't able to make a whole lot of progress in Rokudenashi BLUES in the hour that I was playing it. At one point I just gave up on leveling and started poking around so that I could find other locations. The loop here of search for cash, level up, then go do the next fight to advance the story is really boring. And the combat system just isn't that interesting. Okay, they've compressed 4 attacks into 1 command, but it doesn't really feel like there's a difference between the attacks. It makes the idea of programming your own combos kinda useless. I really don't see myself ever coming back to revisit this one.